Daddy, 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 hurry. I saw something scurry.
Son, what's all this screaming for? You're gonna wake the neighbors next door.
Yo, what up? Today we're reacting to Dolls of Death. Oh, by Snarled. Yeah, this is gonna be a spooky one. So, like, subscribe, and let's get into the video. Let's get scared.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Strange. Want to hear something scary?
Ooh, yeah, I'm so ready. Inspired by
My
Edison.
Oma collects a special brand of antique German dolls, the kind that have a porcelain face and are fragile, but she keeps them in pristine condition. Some of these dolls have been in our family for over 100 years. Each was handmade and dressed in chiffon and lace. On very rare occasions, she would let me hold them and play with them. But this was always supervised because they were so delicate. Bridget was my favorite. She had immaculate brunette hair and these bright green eyes. Her dress
Okay.
was by far the most elaborate, something right out of Bridgerton. My Oma referred to her as the Queen Bee because she was the oldest and most expensive. Around the time I started college, I thought of the perfect birthday gift for my Oma. There was this antique store near the campus, and they had an assortment of old dolls. I found one I thought was perfect. Her name tag read Lacey. She wasn't a special brand, but it was very similar in style. And while she wasn't cheap on a college budget, she was nowhere near the ticket price of my Oma's collection. And it was something we shared and had a love for. So I wanted to get her something that reflected our bond. The night before her birthday, after my Oma had gone to bed, I decided to surprise her by placing Lacey with the others in the display case with a tiny little birthday tiara. When I placed her inside, I realized she was a bit bigger than the others and not of the same quality. But it was a gesture I knew Oma would appreciate. As I posed the doll, I noticed one of her eyes was stuck closed and needed to be manually opened. Her hair wasn't as stylish as the other dolls, and her clothes were a little tatty. She clearly had been played with frequently by the previous owner, but she was still cute and roughly from the same
Okay.
era. I sat her right next to Bridget and told the Queen Bee to welcome Lacey into the fold. During the night, Oma and I were awoken by the shattering of glass.
Hey, yo.
We met in the hallway, turning on all the lamps and making our way to the living room slowly, fearing an intruder. When we turned on the living room overhead light, we saw glass from
Oh,
the display case broken
crap.
and all over the floor. My immediate thought was that perhaps I hadn't closed the door properly after placing Lacey in the fold.
Perhaps.
Then my Oma looked at the floor. "Who's that?" she asked sharply. It was Lacey. Only now, her face was smashed
Oh.
and her dress torn. Oddly, she was the
Oh,
only
no.
doll who was out of the cabinet. Oma ran over and picked her up.
Crap, bro.
"Child, what have you done?" I explained the doll was her birthday gift, but she began shaking it, telling me that I wasn't allowed to add to the collection and that there were very specific rules. Oma seemed to be fixated on the fact that this doll wasn't good enough nor pretty enough. There was a certain elegance and decorum that must be adhered to. The lecture felt strange coming from the woman who adored me and was always so gentle and calm. She thrust Lacey at me and said something which sent a shiver down my spine. "Let's hope they forgive us."
Ugh.
I just stared at the mess as Oma began clearing the glass. I picked up Lacey, unable to work out how much damage had been inflicted. And again, why was she the only doll to have been tossed onto the floor? It's almost as if she had been singled out. Oma was still muttering as she threw away the last of the broken glass. She stood before the cabinet, her hands clamped together almost as if in prayer. I'm so sorry, Bee. She just didn't know. She's just a child still. It won't happen ever again. Was she talking to the dolls? That was when I looked into the cabinet properly. They looked as if they were staring right back at me. And there, right in the center, was Bridget. She seemed to be smirking more than I had ever remembered. Her expression chilled me to the core. But that wasn't what unnerved me the most. Bee was wearing a new accessory. Now upon her perfect hairstyle was the birthday tiara I had placed upon Lacey. The new doll was now battered and broken, and Queen Bee was wearing the crown. It was the strongest admonishment I'd ever encountered. I turned to Oma, who slowly stepped back from the cabinet. She pulled me in for a hug and whispered in my ear, "No more dolls. They don't like it. You won't get another warning."
Yo, grandma, what? Whoa, that was scary.
Evan couldn't sleep because of the faint scratching noise coming from his bedroom wall. It just wouldn't stop. He remembered his parents asking the realtor why the house's price was so low, and she told them it was because of complaints about settling noises in the walls at night. Evan's parents had laughed, saying they were all deep sleepers, but also when they'd moved in, none of them had heard anything. It had been almost a full year since then, and not a sound heard. Until tonight. That following morning, Evan told his parents about the noises in the wall. They checked, but nothing was amiss. Plus, they had slept soundly all last night. That next night, Evan once again heard the slow, persistent scratching, except this time it was louder. He put his ear against his bedroom wall to see if he could make out what it was, but when he did that, it suddenly stopped. Evan crawled back into his bed and was almost asleep when once again, something began scraping inside his wall, this time more urgent and much, much louder. He tried to tell his parents about the noise, but they were already sound asleep. His mother groggily told him to put on headphones and go to bed, and they would figure it out in the morning. Evan put on his headphones and played some relaxing music. To zone out even further, he grabbed a flashlight and curled up under the covers with his favorite manga. Eventually, he fell asleep. Suddenly, Evan startled awake, but he had no idea why. His playlist was over and everything was quiet. The scratching noise was gone. He looked over at the wall. There was a hole in it.
Ooh.
Evan carefully got out of bed, certain he would step on rats or some other vermin, but his room was empty. He inched closer to the hole in the wall and looked inside. It was dark in there. What little he could see, there seemed to be nothing there. No signs of anything except more wall. He needed more light to see inside. Turning back to his bed to get his flashlight, Evan pulled back his covers, and there was a large hole in his bed. Recoiling in horror, Evan stared at the thing staring right back at him. His heart thundered in his chest. He was scared out of his mind. How did it get there? Had it been there while he slept? The doll's cracked porcelain
so
face
creepy.
was dirty, and it had too wide of a grin. Staring right at him was one eye that looked especially sinister, while the other was hollowed out. Its clothes were in tatters, and any color had faded long ago. His heart was finally calming down now. It was just a doll, after all, and Evan wondered if his parents were playing a prank on him. Not funny, he muttered to himself, and just as he spoke, the doll sat up right in his bed and began to laugh. Evan shoved the doll off his bed and ran for the door, but before he could reach it, the doll launched itself off the ground and onto his neck. Tiny, cracked porcelain hands dug into the flesh of his neck.
You imagine
The
if
doll
this happened to
kept
you.
Laughing as it tried to reach around and scratch out his eyes. Evan tried to pull the doll off himself, but it was somehow too strong. A tiny doll hand gashed him just above his eye, and blood rushed into it, half blinding him. Evan screamed, and not knowing what else to do, threw himself backward onto the ground, hearing a satisfying crack come from the doll when he hit the ground. He quickly sprung up and looked back at the doll on the floor. It was smashed, but still laughing as it tried to move. Evan ran out of his room and towards his parents' bedroom for help, but as he passed the stairs, he suddenly heard an unearthly voice behind him. "Where's my doll?" Evan turned to see a sickly green glowing girl just
Oh
a
my
few
God.
years younger than him, with dead black eyes and rotten teeth. As the spectral horror moved closer, Evan desperately backed away from it. So desperately, he forgot about the stairs behind him and fell all the way.
Ouch.
As he lay bleeding at the bottom of the stairwell, he felt a cold hand grab his while another gently stroked his hair. Evan looked up into her dead face, heard the voice of the little dead girl. "You're much better than my dirty old doll. I think I'll keep you forever and ever."
Oh,
The
hell
next
no.
morning, Evan's parents could find no sign of their son, just a creepy old doll in his bed wearing his pajamas. The hole in the wall was gone as well. It was as if there had never been a hole there to begin with, but inside that wall sat the skeletal remains of a long-dead girl and her new friend, Evan. The boy
Jeez.
slowly died as his parents' screams drowned out his last scratching pleas for rescue from inside the wall.
Damn. Okay, window to the soul. Oh man.
A long time ago, I went to an antique store with my dad. We had just finished lunch nearby and wanted to poke around at the local shops. There were a lot of really interesting items, vintage furniture and old paintings, but I was immediately drawn to the section where all the dolls were. I loved dolls, especially the porcelain ones that closed their eyes when you lay them down to sleep. I picked one up and was admiring her golden-hued irises when I heard a voice call out to me. It was an old lady sitting behind the counter. I assumed she was the owner. "You like dolls, little lady?" she croaked, her voice coarse and dry. I nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, I do." She motioned for me to come over to the counter. "That's a very special doll," she continued. "Her name is Savannah. She was mine when I was a young girl, just like you." The old lady continued to ask me questions about my life, my interests, my hobbies, my goals in life. I was used to older people being friendly and inquisitive, so I didn't mind at all. "I just love children," the lady said. "So full of life, so much potential. Not like me. My sight's not what it used to be. Enjoy every moment of your youth, dear." My dad joined me at the counter, but when I showed him Savannah, he told me he wasn't going to buy me yet another doll, then headed back outside.
Doubly dead.
Dejected, I placed the doll back on the counter when the old lady handed it back to me.
Oh
and winked.
no.
I hadn't really noticed how white her eyes were before. I thanked her and left the store. Savannah was my new favorite doll. Even though she was from an antique shop, she was in very good condition. I loved twirling her soft blonde ringlets of hair. Her dress had beautiful embroidered patterns that were extremely fun to run my fingers over. She was the latest addition to my afternoon pretend tea parties, where I'd prop up my dolls in a circle, along with my baby sister, Lexi. I was sipping make-believe tea and gabbing about my imaginary travels all over the world. But I noticed that Lexi was upset. She was usually a happy, quiet baby, but she was frowning and whimpering. "Doll," she mumbled. I grabbed one of my older dolls and waved it in front of her, but it didn't seem to cheer her up. I thought maybe Savannah might be able to calm her down, so I grabbed her and brought her close. But that's when Lexi began screaming. I dropped Savannah and picked up my baby sister. I bounced her up and down in my arms, trying to calm her down. Once she'd stopped crying, I set her back down on the floor near Savannah, who was laying on her back, eyes closed shut. Over the next few days, Lexi continued to act up like this. but only when Savannah was around. I didn't want to admit it at the time, but Savannah was also starting to make me feel uneasy too. Her
Really?
eyes, even though they were yellow, felt so real, so lifelike. I decided to put Savannah away in my closet. The next day, there was a knock on the door. I was in my room playing with my sister, and I heard my dad answer. Then I heard his voice get louder and more angry. I went over to see what was going on. Right outside the door was the old lady from the antique shop. How did she know where we lived? Why was she here? My dad turned to me. "Did you steal that doll?" he said accusingly. "She gave it to me," I replied defensively.
"Don't worry, I'm not here to take her back,"
the old lady explained.
"I just wanted to see if you were enjoying her. Are you still playing with her?"
I was quiet for a few moments. I didn't want to tell her that the doll actually creeped me out now and it was stuffed behind my clothes. So I lied. I love it.
"It isn't polite to lie,"
the old lady screeched. It caught me and my dad off guard.
"You better take her out of that closet or I'll make you regret not appreciating your youth."
At this point, my dad basically shoved her off our front steps and slammed the door. I had no idea what had just happened. What was so special about that doll? I went back to my room and dug Savannah out of my closet. I looked deep into her yellow eyes, those hyper-realistic eyes. And then it hit me. I felt incredibly nauseous. I had brought Savannah with me everywhere. She'd slept in bed with me. She sat on the sink while I showered.
Yeah.
She saw everything. The old lady saw everything.
Oh, hell no.
I knew what I had to do. I held Savannah high in the air and smashed her on the ground. Her face shattered all over the floor. Her glass eyes began to roll away, and I rammed my shoe on top of each of them until they were no more than tiny bits. A wave of relief washed over me. I went to go celebrate my small victory with Lexi. I grabbed her under the arms and hoisted her up in the air, swinging her gently and smiling cheerily at her. I didn't put her down until I noticed her yellow-colored eyes.
Thanks so much for listening. Like and share if this video gave you the chills. And don't forget
Good
to subscribe and turn on the bell for notifications. See you next time.
Yo. W video. What the no, W video. Wow. No, that's so creepy, man. Oh. Yeah, I gotta be honest, I'm also scared of Annabelle and, these antique dolls. And I'm a grown man. Anyway, if you like the video, like, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye.